Keto Freaks. This is Carl. Do you or someone you know have trouble focusing? You know what I'm talking about. You sit down to read something, try to figure out your monthly budget, write that novel you've been putting off, or maybe you just can't seem to do one task at a time. Well, you may not know this, but I'm a musician as well as a software developer. Programming is a job that requires focus, long periods of uninterrupted work. It's hard for them and for you. I've created Music to Code By. This is music, yes, but it's specifically and scientifically designed to promote focus. Studies show that when math students were exposed to Baroque music between 60 and 80 beats per minute, they did better with comprehension and testing. So I created more modern music that is neither boring nor distracting, but falls within that tempo range. It's just the right mix. I also made the pieces 25 minutes long. That correlates to research that shows we all get brain fatigue after 20 or so minutes of hard focus. The result is thousands of happy customers. Now, you don't have to be a programmer to reap the benefits of Music to Code By. It has been known to soothe restless pets, calm fussy babies, and even help autistic kids relax and fall asleep. Listen to some free samples at musictocodeby.net. Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. I'm Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. In February of 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm about 70 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet for over 2 years. When I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've also lost about 70 pounds, and I've completely turned my health around.
So this show is a document of my progress going through nutritional ketosis and Richard's experience thriving for years in nutritional ketosis.
Yeah.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Nah.
So we've done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind them, and we hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
And you'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Sure are.
Yeah, we love to cook and we love to eat. And we share a lot of the great food that we can eat on this diet. And every episode, both of us share a recipe for an essential keto meal that we eat regularly. This show is going to be not only no different, but all about cooking.
Exactly. This is going to be episode 25, The Cooking Show.
The Cooking Show. So, Richard, do we have any corrections or apologies from last week?
Nope, we done good. Ain't nothing what we messed up. So I think we're fine. I think maybe this week we might do. I'm not sure that we're going to do a lot of science this week, so we'll see.
Yeah. But all good suggestions, not just from us, but from our Facebook group about all about cooking. But first, let's do a reprise about what the ketogenic diet is. So the ketogenic diet is any diet in which you are producing ketones or you're in nutritional ketosis.
Yeah, that's it.
The version that we follow, we eat less than 20 grams of carbs a day, which come from incidentals like green leafy vegetables, nuts, that kind of thing.
That's right.
We stay away from packaged food, and we stay away from bars and shakes and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
You want to get just enough protein to fuel your muscles.
Yep.
And if you want to know how much that is, go to the keto calculator, which we post on the show.
Sure.
And then the rest of your calories come from fat. And the fat is either on your plate or it's from that Krispy Kreme donut you ate a decade ago.
That's it. That's my favorite Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, trademark. So over time, you'll find that you naturally eat less because your hunger goes away.
Yep.
And after you go through carb withdrawal, which might take a few days in the first week or two, it's pretty much smooth sailing. And then you can do stuff like intermittent fasting and extended fasting and really bring your insulin down. Yeah, you can get fancy.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more about that, check out the Eating Patterns show that we did.
Sure.
All right. Well, how was your week, Richard?
Yeah, I'm fine. I did my normal long bike ride today. I did 45K, and it was a sunny day to start off with, and then it started getting a bit cloudy, so I thought, I'll come in. And I've also done a lot of cooking. I've had a smoke-a-thon here. I have made...
Nice.
I bought a beef plate, which is the beef version of the pork belly on a cow, obviously.
Is that like the brisket?
It's kind of like a brisket. It's brisket at one end of it, and the plate is sort of like, it's the belly, really. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's the belly.
You'd roll it up to make it into a brisket roast. But so we sliced that up, and we have been curing it for the past week and a half. And yesterday I smoked it in 3 pieces. I smoked one plain, one that was smoked with a pepper rub, and the other was smoked with a lemon myrtle, which is an Australian plant, and also roast wattle seed rub. That's another Australian plant. So it's really Australian bush tucker spices. So, yeah, delicious. We had some tonight for dinner. Oh, beef bacon is so good. So, yeah, I've had an awesome week. How was your week,
great.
Carl?
Oh, it was awesome. I did I went back to my eating pattern of lunch only. Mm-hmm. And if I do anything in the evening, it's a couple of drinks. I found that drinking a couple of bourbons actually does better for me than drinking wine.
Sure.
Just because wine has some incidental carbs, and, if you can get rid of those, it's even better. But as we mentioned before, alcohol pauses ketosis, and it does slow down, the rate at which you burn fat.
Yep.
So, but I kind of like this. It's a very comfortable pattern for me, and I don't get hungry, and I lose weight, and it seems to work. But I had a slip up. After the 3rd day of this,
right,
I started the day with what I thought was a benign food, ham salad from the deli.
Should be okay, right?
Yeah, it should be okay. It was sort of ham chopped up in mayo.
Sure.
And I tasted something else in there, and it tasted kind of pickly, but I thought it was like vinegar. I didn't think it was all that sweet. But then, after I ate about a half a pound of this, I started feeling those telltale cravings, right? And I was like, what's going on here? So I went back to the store, and I spoke to the person behind the deli, and I said, can you tell me what's in this? And the deli person went back to the cook or the chef. She comes back, she says, it's just ham, mayo, and pickles. And I said, can I see that pickle jar for a second? And she goes, sure. She brings it back. Yeah, loaded with sugar.
Yeah, number 2 ingredient was sugar.
Yeah, it was. That's right.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so I stopped eating that, and then I ate a keto lunch, and it was pretty good, and that basically solved my hunger problem. But then I was out with Kelly, my wife, and we went to go visit my daughter, who's a hostess at a local restaurant, and there was a band playing, so we thought we'd check out the band.
Nice. Yep.
And she was hungry, and she wanted to get some wings. And the wings on the menu looked like regular wings, and they came in different flavors and all that stuff, and I didn't get anything. And then her wings came, and they smelled pretty good, and I was like, I think I'm going to have one.
Yeah.
So I had one, and I thought they were pretty good. I didn't pay too much attention to it, and had another and another, and then I felt like I was getting hungrier again, and I'm like, wait a minute. And they were ever so lightly breaded.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they weren't really, really heavily breaded. Otherwise, I would have known, but
Sure.
They were just ever so lightly breaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I went home, and now I'm really hungry, so I basically pigged out on keto food.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Because that's what I do when I'm hungry. I eat a lot of fatty stuff, bacon and whatever, and then I was fine. But yeah, that did set me back.
Yeah, well, you've gone from one meal a day to 3 meals a day that day. So you had your ham salad to start off with, you had your keto lunch, and then you had your, you had dinner.
That's right.
So it's amazing how quickly those carbohydrates just get you on the roller coaster,
Yep.
And I think I'll probably always be broken in that way. I will probably always be affected in that way by carbohydrates because I've been doing this for 2 years and it still affects me in that way.
Sure. So anyway, I'm back on the horse, no problem. Awesome. And I love the fact that I can get back on the horse,
Yeah.
Before I got fat adapted and went through all this whole process and lost all my weight, if that had happened to me before while I was trying to eat better and eat low carb, and it happened to me a lot, I'd be wrecked for a month.
Be a major setback. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go a month just saying, screw it, I can't do this, and get all down and stuff. But now it's like a day. Yeah. And I'm back in the saddle. So
No,
I love that. Yeah. But I'm my weight is way off, 72, 73 pounds, something like that. I managed to drop quite a few pounds. I put a couple back on, but I'm sure those will come back down in a couple of days. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right, let it be a lesson to you, kids. Read the labels.
Don't trust anyone.
Don't trust anyone. All right, it's time for
Mail.
We're justified and we don't need no alibi. Mail. All right. We had some great mail, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We had one from our Facebook group. Now, if anyone wants to join us on Facebook, our group you can find at fb.2keto.com.
Yep.
But this one was from Deanna, and we've heard from her before. And
yes.
This email floored me. It's
me too.
Spectacular. Let me lay this out for you. Deanna proposes a language upgrade. Instead of saying keto flu, let's say carb withdrawal. Keto flu implies that you are sick due to ketones, which is not true. Specifically, we become ill due to the withdrawal of carbohydrates.
Yes.
My former carb addiction appeared suspiciously similar to drug addiction. It was a nasty roller coaster ride on a daily basis, and I was a pissy creature when I didn't get my carbs.
A little hangry.
Once I broke that dependence, I didn't crave them anymore.
She's so right. And we all just went, of course. Why are we calling it keto flu?
Well, everybody who wants to say horrible things about the keto diet, and we've got to admit there are people out there like vegans and dietitians who really think that what we're doing is wrong. We have the science to disagree with them, but they're not interested in that science. They're interested in their worldview. And you'll find that a lot of them will say, oh, ketosis is a horrible condition because you get the keto flu. It gives you the flu, and most people can't stick that out. Well, no, it's actually carbohydrate withdrawal is exactly what it is.
And really, the science says that when you have this, it's because your body isn't quite used to or good at processing fat and ketones and getting energy from ketones, yet there isn't enough energy from glucose. And so it's in this sort of limbo where you're just not getting enough energy.
Yeah. It's in that horrible valley between two comfortable peaks.
Exactly. And it goes away in a couple of days. And if you know it's coming, and you know that you can stick it out, because you can, it's not impossible. It's not even difficult, really. You just kind of got to look forward to some naps. All right, well, this next one is from Jim Hausman, and he says, hey, everybody, I love the podcast so much. I started keto on May 1st, thanks to Reddit Keto, and I've discovered your podcast link there a week or so later.
Cool.
I'm down almost 50 pounds now.
Wow.
Yeah. Honestly, I might not have succeeded with the diet if it wasn't for the podcast. It's amazing. Keeps you very motivated.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I could have not read that sentence because it was gratuitous praise, but okay, we'll take it. Having said that, I have a question that maybe a bunch of other listeners have too. I don't believe you've addressed this before, but it's a question I get from other people all the time when I mention keto. For those of us on keto solely for weight loss and not to manage diabetes, how does one transition back into the world of carbs once our target weight has been obtained? What's the exit strategy? Don't get me wrong, I'm loving keto. And I know the standard advice is keep calm and keto on. But for some of us, the diet eventually has to stop. And I'm scared of gaining it all back again.
Sure.
Yeah. I've just been telling people I'd add carbs back in gradually and never again in amounts like before, but account for it by exercising at the gym. After doing keto, it's like I look at other types of diets and weight loss plans as inferior. Haha, this has just been too effective and too easy, and you feel so good. The longer I'm on it, the more I'm considering just not stopping. But a lot of people will need to eventually. What do we do at the end?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question.
Sure is.
Dr. Atkins' plan was to have people slowly add carbs back in until they find at the level that they gain weight at. And then they know what their long-term carb limit is, and then just stay on that limit. Doctors Finney and Volek suggests that you just up your plate fat. You increase your plate fat until you stabilize your body weight.
Right.
Now, Tim Noakes suggests increasing carbs if you aren't on the diabetic spectrum. If you are, and for those of us who are, carbs would just further derange us, then he suggests increasing fat.
You know, what my experience this last week is a perfect example of that. I have insulin resistance and I'm type 2 diabetic, you know, and just the slightest bit of sugar can kick me out.
Yeah. We're slowly getting better. The longer that we stay in a low sugar environment, we're slowly getting better. But it took us decades to get to where we are, and it may take us decades to work our way back to the insulin sensitivity we had when we were younger. And most people generally get worse the older they get, so we may never get back to where we were when we were young. Yeah,
but Jim's question is specifically about, I'm doing it for weight loss. I don't have metabolic syndrome. So in that case, yes, he might be more successful at slowly adding carbs back in.
Yeah. I tend to think that fat to satiety, which is our catch cry, will address this issue, because as you get close to goal, you should become more hungry and therefore you eat more fat. And so it's kind of like, it is really Finney and Volek's strategy and Tim Noakes' strategy combined in one, but it's relying on being able to use your hunger. And a lot of people have a pessimistic view of hunger because in an environment with lots of carbs, hunger doesn't work very well. You had this problem today or the other day with once you had a few carbs, your hunger was unreliable.
Right. But then again, I have diabetes, you know, and the question is for those who don't have it. And I have noticed in people that have done it for weight loss that don't have metabolic syndrome, that once they get to a goal weight, they can actually eat carbs and not get hungry and not have the insulin response, and it helps them maintain. So, you know, I wouldn't recommend adding carbs for anyone in my position, in Richard's position, but who knows? I don't have the experience of somebody who doesn't have metabolic syndrome and adds carbs. I don't have that experience, so I couldn't tell you.
My only experiences with Julie, she did the diet at the same time that I did, and she is not insulin resistant, but she was becoming overweight, and and she can now tolerate a lot more carbs than I can. So that's definitely proven the case. My attitude is that we need to be able to trust hunger. I have an optimistic view of hunger, and that is that learning to rely on hunger and other body signals to appropriately drive our feeding strategies is the only approach that's going to work on the long term. Yeah. Because that's really what our bodies were evolved to do. And once we get rid of that confusing noise that's created by mass amounts of carbohydrates, once we get that noise out of our environment, then appetite's able to be used as an appropriate signal, just like it did for our grandparents and about 30,000 generations before them. And it only just stopped working around our parents' time when we introduced a lot of sugar into our food supply. Yeah. So that's my strategy. But I think if you eat fat to satiety, you will naturally, as you get to a stable, healthy weight range, you will naturally end up eating more fat on your plate. If you need to, yeah. All right, so we have one more, right? Yeah, so this one's from Mick, and also from our Facebook group. And Mick says, so I was thinking about all of those other diets that you hear about, Nutrisystem, Weight Watchers, etc. They always trot out some person who has lost an amazing amount of weight. And they look good, never mind the fact that they will gain it all back. Most likely, yeah. Yeah, but every one of those has the catch, results not typical. Well, I can't help but notice that everybody here seems to be melting away. Only those who give up seem to be failing to lose the weight. Dare I say keto results are typical?
I don't know.
No.
What do I know? I've only been doing this since February, so I haven't seen any long-term, effects or one way or the other. I haven't seen anybody keep it off. I mean, I've seen you. You've been, you've been losing weight and off it for 2 years, I don't have very much data to go on here.
Yeah. Well, what we do have is we have the people who joined us in the group, and we've seen some of their successes. And you're commenting to me the other day that it seems to be that people are sharing great success stories, and all of a sudden it's the same thing is happening to everybody that's been happening for us, which has been great. Yep. We did a poll in the group, and it turns out that 44% of people are actively losing weight. So that's an outstanding result, because for most diets, it would be more like 10% are actively losing weight and 80% are plateaued and 10 are in the process of giving up. So we've got 44% are losing weight. 24% have plateaued for one reason or another. 17% have started and they're just in the adaptation stage. And another 10% are at their goal weight and they're sticking with keto. So, over half of us are either at goal weight or headed in that direction. So that's an outstanding result.
And I would say that plateaued isn't failure either. That's so you could probably add the 44 and 24 together, get 66% who are actually losing weight. If you're plateaued, you've lost weight.
Yeah, by definition, and also you're in a low sugar state, you're in a low insulin state, you're in a low blood pressure state. So, if you're a bit frustrated because everybody seems to be getting on a bus and going somewhere and you still seem to be sitting at the bus stop, it's a good place to sit and wait for a bus, because you're low blood sugar, low insulin, low blood pressure. So you're getting healthier every day.
And Karen Mangicotti likes to tell her story a lot in the Facebook group, which is, for the first few weeks or months or whatever, she gained weight.
Yeah.
But she kept going with it because she felt good. She felt better. And she knew that it was going to happen. So she had noticed that even though she had gained weight, she was losing inches around her waist, and clothes were fitting better. And, what's basically going on there is she's building muscle, and muscle weighs more than fat.
Yeah.
So there you go. You're losing fat, but you're gaining muscle, and the net effect is that you're gaining weight. And so that happens from time to time. That may be what's going on in plateaus, but we don't really know.
Yeah, I think I ran into my insulin level. So, that's something that I'm working on. But I'm healthier than I've ever been in my life. So, as far as I'm concerned, weight loss is not the goal, but for me, it was a nice bonus. The goal for me was health.
So I don't have an exit strategy. I plan to do this until the day I die. So I guess you could say my exit strategy is death.
They can prize keto out of my cold, dead hands.
That's right. Give me bacon or give me death. I feel a t-shirt coming on there. Oh, and by the way, get your 2 Keto Dudes t-shirts at gear.2keto.com. We have t-shirts and coffee mugs and stuff, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time shilling it, but just go there and see if there's something you like.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about cooking.
Yeah, let's talk about cooking.
Yeah, we obviously cook because we post recipes, and we know that some of you out there don't have time to cook. Well, you think you don't have time to cook, but really, let's talk about the reasons why you should spend a little time every week cooking.
Yeah, my theory has always been if you don't know how to cook, then you're just outsourcing control over your own health. And I think it's important that we teach our children, especially our boys, to cook, because there's been an entire generation, the generation that we are in, mostly don't cook. We're probably unusual that we like to cook. And I think it's probably a good thing if you have kids to inoculate them against obesity by teaching them the mechanisms of cooking.
And also the fact that you're going to the store, picking out food, bringing it home and cooking it, you're getting fresh ingredients, obviously.
Yeah.
And, avoiding the things in boxes. And for the reason Richard just said, you're outsourcing your health to whoever put this stuff together, and whether they bent the truth by telling you how many carbs are in there or not, or sweeteners or whatever, it's just always better to eat real food. So let's talk about the excuse, I don't have time to cook.
Sure.
All right. But you got time to watch Game of Thrones, right?
Well, it actually doesn't take that long to cook.
No, it doesn't.
You can literally cook up an entire week's worth of food in a couple of hours, you know?
That's right. And a lot of things that we cook can go in the oven, and you just have to sit in the kitchen and take them out when they're done, or a crock pot or things like that.
Yeah.
So I think of cooking as an investment in time in my health. And I think of the food that I buy and the kitchen accoutrement, that I buy as medical expenses.
Wow. Yeah.
Let's think about this for a second. If you consider food to be medicine, you have no problem going to the pharmacy and dropping $100 on, metformin or whatever it is. I know metformin doesn't cost that much, but whatever the medications are, you have no problem taking an ambulance ride to the ER when you have a heart attack. And, that's going to cost you a lot of money and probably out of pocket because, let's face it, insurance in the U.S. sucks. Mm-hmm. And you have no problem paying these bills because you sort of have to, but nobody's really holding a gun to your head and saying, hey, you should go buy a fry pan, or you should buy a vacuum sealer, or you should get a crock pot or anything like that. These are all optional because we can just go get prepackaged stuff and cook it and eat it, or, microwave it, which is, has become very popular. But it just doesn't take that much time. Mm. And if you think about it as an investment in your health, not only a money investment in the gear that you buy, but a time investment. Like Richard said, you can just do a few hours a week and put everything in the freezer and pre-make your meals, and you're going to be so much happier. Not only that, but it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It's like a down payment on enjoyment on a great meal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have great meals here, Julie and I. And in a lot of cases, the actual meal itself takes 5 or 10 minutes to prepare because we've pre-done some of the work maybe a month ago. For example, we might take a shoulder of lamb and we'll smoke it or slow cook it, and we'll bag it up into freezer bags and into 200-gram portions. And I may have an entire tray of my freezer with about 30 perfectly portioned frozen pulled lamb. And all I've got to do is pull that out, chuck it in the microwave for a minute, chuck it in a pan, add some kind of sauce, tomato sauce, or a bit of stock, some spices, and I've got an entire range of things that I can turn that into. Yeah,
so I totally agree. The first piece of equipment that you'll need to have is a freezer.
Yeah.
If it's your freezer section of your refrigerator, that's fine.
Yeah.
But, before you start here, let's throw out all the garbage that's in there, or all the old frostbitten, things that you thought you were going to eat
and can no longer identify.
Yeah, that haven't been packaged correctly, and they're all sort of So that's it. That's first. Also, before you do any of that, you sort of have to clean out your pantry, right?
Sure. Julie wrote a great story on my blog, which we'll link in the show notes, on how to clean out your kitchen pantry. And her recipe for doing this is get rid of all of the snacks, and this on the blog are a bunch of alternative snacks that you can replace things like potato chips and crackers and biscuits and cookies with, and get rid of all breakfast cereals, muesli bars, granola bars. You're not going to be able to eat those in keto. Oatmeal, yeah. Pretty much get rid of all of those starches. Get rid of pasta. Get rid of rice. Get rid of wheat-based flours.
Yeah.
Sugars. You don't want any sugars in your life.
No.
Corn flour and cornstarch. Anything that's low fat, pretty much. Anything that's low fat is evil.
Just toss it all.
Somebody's made a pact with the devil to make that thing taste okay by putting sugar in it. You do not want that. So pretty much the first thing that I suggest people do when they go keto is to go through their entire pantry and get rid of all of the food that doesn't fit a ketogenic lifestyle, which is basically anything with sugar and starch in it. And keep all of the things like you want to keep oils. In fact, you want to add to your oil collection because there's a lot of wonderful oils like nut oils, avocado oils.
Avocado oil, yeah.
Yeah, olive oil is great. We even have some of the omega-6 oils, like we have a little bit of soy oil and
linseed oil, flax oil.
Linseed oil, flax oil, yeah. So
coconut oil.
Coconut oil, oh, definitely. We buy coconut oil in bulk from Costco, and we go through that stuff like crazy. So you want to keep vinegars. You want to probably add to your vinegar collection. You be a bit careful about your finishing vinegars, your balsamics. They can be a little bit sweet, but for the most part, vinegars are great.
Apple cider vinegar is a must.
Oh yeah, you got to have apple cider vinegar. So we love herbs and spices, and we love adding them to food. So make sure you keep your herbs and spices. Most of them have no carbs, except there's a few that have sugar in them. Like there's an Indian one that's made from fennel seeds that's coated with sugar. You don't want those.
All right, so let's talk about the gear that you should buy. And we said before, a freezer. If your freezer is already stuffed full of ice cream that your partner or your roommate has got in there and you need more space, jump on Craigslist, jump on Dean's List or whatever it is.
Get a chest freezer.
Get a chest freezer. They're pretty cheap, or you could find a used one. Is what we did. We found one for $100, and it lasted us for a while, and then it started leaking and frosting over. So it's time to get a new one. But a freezer is going to be a critical piece of medical equipment for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing about chest freezers is because hot air rises, cold air falls, and because the chest freezer, when you open it, the cold air doesn't fall out like it would in a stand-up freezer. They're very efficient to run, very cheap to run. So, I highly recommend getting yourself a decent-sized freezer.
Also a vacuum sealer. Now, this is a device that comes with a roll of bag that's sealed on the left and right edges, and you basically pull it off, slice it, and seal one end, put some stuff in there, and flip it over, seal the other end, and it sucks all the air out, and you're left with this really heavy-duty plastic, airtight, sealed thing that you can do. Like Richard says, he puts portioned meat in there. Yeah. I just cooked up a pernil, the Cuban slow-cooked pork roast, the pork butt.
Nice.
That was my recipe a couple of shows ago. And that's the kind of thing where, it's essentially spices that go on a pork shoulder with a little olive oil. Put it in a bag, an oven bag, in a rack, in the oven, 275 degrees for about 5.5 hours. And that's it. That's all there is to it.
Nice.
You just put it in and you take it out 5.5 hours later. What's the problem? You sit in the kitchen and work on your laptop or go take a nap or whatever, and you come back.
Go cut some code. Yeah.
Yeah. You let that rest, and then you make up a sauce with the juice and add some butter or heavy cream and get that in, and that'll solidify. And then you can take some of that pork butter, I like to call it, and butter. Just add it to the portioned and versions. And with our leftovers, I had 6 meals out of that.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So anytime I'm home and I don't have time, I'll, like Richard says, throw it in the microwave. I prefer not to put plastic in the microwave for, because I'm a little paranoid about
BPAs.
BPAs. So what I do is I just take a pot of water that's near boiling and throw it in there.
Yeah.
And let it warm up.
Good idea. I would probably regard a vacuum sealer as an optional rather than a necessary gadget, because we get, in Australia, we can get Ziploc bags that are meant to go in the freezer or in the microwave, and are generally regarded as safe for both options. They have a little space where you can write on what they are, and you can actually use a Ziploc bag to remove most of the air by rolling the food. So, if you can't afford a vacuum sealer, then you can buy Ziploc baggies, which will do the job. But yeah, I love my vacuum sealer. I use it for sous vide. I use it for everything.
Yeah, there is a hand pump version of a vacuum sealer where you can get special Ziploc bags that have a flap or something. Yeah. And I'm not sure if Ziploc is the brand, but essentially then it looks like a bicycle pump, but a smaller one.
Okay.
And you basically set it right over this flap and then pump it out, and it sucks all the air out.
It's like a little valve.
Yeah, the valve, exactly. And then there are little Tupperware style containers that also work with this hand sealer.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah. So not only do you have bags, but you can actually seal these, things.
Yeah.
And using those, of course, is going to be more expensive and going to take up more space in the freezer. But you get the idea. What you want to do is make something that's going to give you 10, 15 meals, and then portion it up and freeze it in these bags. And you want to get the air out. Otherwise, it's going to get freezer burn, and it's not going to be good when it thaws.
Yeah. That's true. So what other kitchen gadgets would you put on your list of must-haves?
Definitely a cast iron fry pan or two.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, I get the classic Loge cast iron fry pans. You have cast iron too, right?
Yeah, I do. I've got a Osfont one, which is made from, it's an Australian one made with Australian steel, but it was actually designed by an engineer who went to school with my brother. So,
wow.
So I'm a little bit partial to those, but they're just as good as Lodge ones, I'm sure. But they're intended to be handed down for generations. So they're intended to be in families for 200-300 years, and you'll find out there's some families who've passed on cast iron because it just doesn't break. It lasts forever.
Nope.
And
doesn't break, doesn't warp.
No, all you need to do is, I mean, it's not non-stick, but there's a technique for sealing them that
it's called seasoning a pan.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it's very simple. You want to use an oil with a high smoke point, like flaxseed oil, linseed oil, same thing.
Grapeseed oil.
You can use, grapeseed oil. Olive oil is okay. It smokes a little bit, lower, but that's all right. And what you're going to do is essentially coat the pan all over, and I mean all over, under, over, inside, handles. No surface should be unfatted. And then essentially you put it in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about an hour, at least an hour. And then you want to turn off the oven and not touch it, because guess what, kids? That's going to be blazing hot.
Very hot.
And let it cool down. When it comes out, you wipe it out, and you're probably done.
Yeah.
You may want to do it again if you need to at a certain point. But the next question is, how do I wash, these pans?
Don't put it in the dishwasher.
Don't put it in the dishwasher. But I've heard people say you can't use soap to clean.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. What you can't do is use an abrasive, right? So don't use a scoury steel wool. Yeah, that'll scrape off your seasoning.
If you put it in the dishwasher, what will happen is you'll lose all of your seasoning, and then it'll rust if you don't season it immediately. So you pretty much, if you do dishwash it, I guess we wash ours maybe once a month or so. It would just in soapy water. Most times you just wipe it out with a paper towel. They don't pick up a lot of food residue. We also have a German pan, which is not a cast iron pan. It's a steel pan, but it's a non-stick steel pan. It doesn't have a Teflon coating. It's the actual steel itself is very milled very finely. But I love my cast iron. If you want to get sear a steak, just put the cast iron pan on a high heat and just let it sit there, and it just builds up a rolling heat, and then you put your steak on and it jumps. It is so quick to sear. Yeah.
So there's a couple of other things here. After you wash your cast iron pan, you need to dry it immediately. If you let the water sit on it, it's going to rust, as Richard said. Dry it with a paper towel immediately. Also, cast iron keeps and holds heat better than stainless steel or Teflon coated pans.
That's true. Yep.
And so you typically don't have to turn them up as high, especially if you're over a flame. So typically when I'm cooking anything in a cast iron skillet over flame, I have a propane range.
Yeah.
I'll just turn it to medium low.
Okay.
And that's where I start. Medium is really too high for most things that need to cook, like eggs or even sausages or hamburgers or anything like that.
Yeah. The other thing is that a meal, if you make a meal in it, a sauce or a stew or something, you can sit it on a trivet and it'll hold the temperature for a long time. So you don't have to put it on a low stove. You just throw it on a trivet and it'll hold its heat nicely.
Yeah. If I'm making eggs for my family in the morning. You know, I'll cook them up, and it might take a few minutes before the kids come rolling into the kitchen to have breakfast. I'll just let it sit in the pan until they're ready, and it'll keep them hot.
One thing that I really like using with a cast iron pan is a cooking stick. Now, this is a device. I've been looking for the link to this thing because it is a thing, but basically it's a wooden spoon with a flat end, and it's got a flat,
like a spatula. Like
a spatula, but it's got a flat sort of edge to it, and it's really good for pulling the fond off the bottom of the cast iron pan when you're cooking, like you cook some bacon or something, and you've got that little crispy stuff on the bottom of the pan.
Oh yeah.
So you know this can get in there, and because it's wood, it doesn't scour the pan, it doesn't damage the surface. So I love my cooking stick. I'm going to I guess I have to put a photo of it on my blog, but I've got to find the website for these people that make this thing. But it's just a spatula, a wooden spatula, but it's called a cooking stick.
All right. We also talked about using a slow cooker or a crock pot.
Oh yeah.
And this is great for people who want to save time because you get up for work in the morning, and before you go to work, it takes you 5 minutes to put stuff in the crock pot, whether it's a porchetta or a roast or some pork or some lamb. Put a little liquid in the bottom, not too much because more liquid means it'll dry out. And this is something that a lot of people learn the hard way. And, put some oil in there is better, a better option, seasoned oil. And then just let it cook and set it on low and go away and come back after work and you've got dinner.
And what you can do actually with slow cooking meals is you can, on a Sunday before your week starts, you can put together 7 different meals in bags ready to go and just freeze them. And you just you've got all of your ingredients in the bag. It's frozen. You've got Monday written on it or Tuesday, what it is and how you propose to eat it, and you just dump it in your slow cooker, go off to work. When you get home, you've got a freshly cooked meal. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's right. A blender. Everybody needs a blender.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What do you call it, a whizzer?
You could whiz it. I've got one. I've got a bunch, but I have one called the Magic Bullet, which is awesome. It's a as seen on TV Demtel item, but it does a really good job of grinding spices, a really good job of mixing up sauces. I've also got a stick blender for making mayonnaise. And I've got a food processor which can also blend for large batches and stuff. So those 3 are probably my critical ones. You want something cup size, you want a stick blender, and you want something bowl size.
I also have a food processor. Now, remember, this is medical equipment. You have to really look at this as an investment in your health, kids.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't justify this as just stuff I like to play with. This is your health we're talking about.
Yeah.
And, the more you cook at home, the healthier you're going to be. So I have a Cuisinart food processor that I use for everything. Yeah. I love it, love it, love it.
Yeah. Wonderful. I've been tempted to buy a Thermomix. These are devices that cook and blend, and they're programmable. You can set everything up and they'll do the job for you. You can temper chocolate in them, you can make mousse, you can make soup, you can make everything in them. But they're like $1,800, and the only way you can get them in Australia is through a party plan. So you have to basically go to somebody who's already got one, and it's like a multi-level marketing thing. And $1,800. But I'm tempted. It's a medical equipment. It's important.
Yeah, that's right. It's medical equipment. Would you skimp on a dialysis machine for your house? No, I don't think you would. But guess what? If you don't, I'm not even going to say that. This is insurance that you're basically investing in your health.
It is.
A garlic press. Yeah. I went through 7 garlic presses before I landed on one that actually worked well.
I also have a good one as well.
The key is that I think don't buy a plastic one.
Nope.
Buy a metal garlic press that's sturdy and has some weight to it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's what I landed with, and I use it all the time. There's all sorts of crazy contraptions for helping you peel garlic, for helping you.
You don't need to peel it.
No.
No, you just pull the cloves off, leave the skin on, put them in the press, and bear down on it. Use some muscles.
That's right.
And and that's why you want a sturdy press. I've got this fancy one that as you open the garlic press, it's got a little blade that slices off. It basically comes out the backside of the garlic press to pull all of the garlic off that's just been pushed out. So it's a fancy piece of equipment. But
that's nice.
Yeah, it is. The other thing that I really like is a garlic roaster. So this is a little terracotta thing, and you basically put an entire bulb of garlic in, and you slice through and cover it with a bit of oil. Slice basically through the base of it, cover it with a bit of oil, and you put it in your oven, and it will roast your garlic for you. And basically, you will just be able to squeeze the garlic out like toothpaste.
Yeah.
And it just modifies the flavour. It's still obviously garlic, but it's so mellow. It's delicious flavor.
Mellow, mild. Takes that bite away.
Yeah, it does.
And you can spread it on fathead crackers or whatever else that you want.
Spread it on a piece of cheese.
Oh, yeah. Spread it on a piece of bacon.
So the other thing that I really love is a good chef knife.
Yeah.
I've always liked to have nice knives. I've not always been able to afford them. But when we came back to Australia, we saw some shun knives. Now, these are Japanese knives. They're a watered steel so that they're basically layer upon layer. It's almost samurai sword quality of a knife. And I have a Santoku knife, which has got scallops in the blade to enable it to go through something like a piece of cheese, where normally you get the blade it sticks to the material. This prevents that happening. And these are extremely sharp. I say probably a good idea to have a good chef knife. I really like my Santoku. It fits to my hand perfectly. And so, I love that knife. And you need a good wooden chopping board. You can use bamboo. Yep. You can use a polycarbonate as well. I mean, you can use a plastic one, but I prefer to use a wooden chopping board personally.
Me too.
So, I definitely suggest you must have one good knife, but I've got an entire set of knives that I love. My paring knife, my cleaver, my carving knife, and my filleting knives. These I use almost every day. And
get yourself a good knife sharpener too.
Oh yeah.
And not just the honing stick that comes with a set of knives, because that doesn't quite sharpen it. It just sort of realigns the edge molecules and lines them up so that it does sharpen it. But
it gets rid of burrs, so you may have a slight burr to the blade. But no, I send mine out to be sharpened. I get a professional to do the job, but you can get a diamond block and sharpen your own knives. I probably should do that.
There is a local supermarket here called Big Y.
Okay.
And if you bring your knife set to the butcher, they will sharpen them for free.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's pretty good. We've got in a place called Essential Ingredient, which has all sorts of far-out ingredients, and they have a professional knife sharpener who turns up every month, and basically he's out the back with his grinding stone, getting your knives perfectly ground. So
love it.
We send them out to him.
So there's ways to do it. Next on my list, a pizza stone.
Really?
I think it's absolutely critical now that I've done a fathead pizza on it.
Oh, yeah?
I wouldn't do it any other way.
It holds the heat and it dissipates it, so you don't end up with hot spots. It's really a great way to cook pizza.
As opposed to putting a pizza crust on a cold cookie sheet.
Right.
This is already hot when you put it on there, so it doesn't have to cook as long. But that's my recipe. I'll get to that later.
So, of course, you need an oven and a stovetop, and I think you need both of those. I've gone through times where my oven's broken and I've tried to survive, and it's, with Dutch ovens on a stovetop, it just doesn't work. So, I think pretty much you need to get yourself an oven. There are some fan-forced ovens that you can buy, just like a glass. It's like a glass terranium with a fan on top that forces heat through it, and they do a reasonable job. But no, a good oven is worth the money.
You're also going to need some cookie sheets, service trays, cooking trays.
Yeah.
These basic things that we use in parchment paper is definitely something that we like to, because a lot of the things that we bake are protein based, and so they will stick to metal, but they slip right off of parchment. Nice.
So let's go through a couple of optional gadgets that would be nice to have. You don't have to have them. One of them is a sous vide machine. Yeah. You've got a dog food, right? So you've got a gadget that converts your slow cooker into a sous vide machine.
Yep, and it's about $100, and I've talked about it a couple of times on the show. Yeah. It's great if you can put up with the clicking of the relay, turning the crock pot on and off. But it's a nice way to make a 72-hour piece of beef.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got an Aldi water bath, which I've spoken about before. But I think the thing I really want to get at some point is a circulating wand device. So there's a couple of brands out there that will do them. So I've got my eye on a couple. I've kickstarted one, so I'll wait and see if they actually end up with a product at any point.
Yeah. A pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Something that I have, and I love it.
Absolutely. Making stocks.
Making stocks or making tough meats palatable, stuff that you would normally slow cook. Yeah. You can do in the pressure cooker for an hour.
Sure.
And it's like it's been cooked for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
When it comes out.
Yeah, another thing I really like is a bacon press, which is a weight that you put on top of bacon to stop it curling up, and it forces the entire surface area of the bacon to come into contact with the pan rather than just parts of it come into contact. It forces the entire thing, so the entire surface of the bacon cooks. And
I got to get one of those.
Yeah, I got one from a place in America, actually in Los Angeles, in Glendale, called Sula Table, but it's got a wooden handle and it's got a cast iron base, and it does a wonderful job. So I highly recommend a bacon press.
Wow, I'm going to get me one of those, because this is how you use it. You put the bacon press in the hot pan and let it heat up.
Yeah, and
so now you've essentially got 2 pans, one on the bottom and one on the top, and your bacon not only cooks all the way through, but it cooks in half the time.
Sure. The other thing I really like is a ring form, which is it's like a cookie cutter, like a large round cookie cutter, but you use it to place food in the middle of a plate. It's a fancy thing that chefs do, but I like it because it means that I can stack a fennel salad on the bottom. I can stack pulled meat in the middle. I know Carl's laughing right now. He thinks
I'm laughing because I love this. Yeah. I mean, we're foodies here. Like, we're eating really restaurant quality food that we're making at home.
It's
a ring mold. Who does that?
I do that. Now, you can actually ghetto it. You can buy these things from Essential Ingredient in Australia, and then I'm sure there are places like Sula Table in America. But
yeah, you can use a tuna can ring, right?
Absolutely. You ghetto it by cut out both ends of a can and use that.
That's right.
But it's a good way of portioning to make sure that everybody gets the right size portion, and it makes your food look a bit fancy.
I also have a cast iron Dutch oven.
Oh, yeah.
This is really good for cooking stews. And I have both a beef and a lamb stew that I make, and slow cooked in the Dutch oven. I haven't made it for a while. I'm going to have to post the recipe. Yeah. But it's a modified recipe from Cook's Illustrated. I don't know if you know about Cook's Illustrated.
No.
Well, you've heard of Consumer Reports.
Yes.
All right. Consumer Reports is a not-for-profit organization that does testing of different products and then rates them, and they are free from advertiser influence. So they're strictly subscription-based. You buy a subscription and you know you're getting an unbiased opinion. Sure. Well, Cook's Illustrated is sort of the Consumer Reports of cooking.
Okay.
They have, if you've heard of America's Test Kitchen.
Yeah.
They have a test kitchen suite in Boston, this huge place where they essentially perfect recipes. And then they publish, it's a subscription-only magazine with no advertising, and they publish these stories where they go through the process of how they started, what didn't work, what did work, and how they modified the recipe to end up where they got.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. The problem is, of course, it's not low carb. So if you don't mind the food porn with the biscuits and the pies and the cakes and all that stuff, it's really good for essential cooking techniques, though.
Right.
So the Dutch oven, what it is it's a cast iron, for lack of a better word, a kettle-looking thing. And you can buy a large version and a small version. Has a cast iron lid.
Yep.
And essentially, like a slow cooker, you put stuff in there and put it in the oven. And yeah, you can use one instead of a slow cooker. I've got a large Le Creuset one, so it's enameled. It's an enameled cast iron, so that makes it even more non-stick. You don't have to season it, but it does a really good job. Fish is, you can do fish in it very easily, or stew, as you say. Do a nice stew. Yep.
Yeah. So another gadget that I've got that I know that you're going to get for your birthday, which is coming up very soon, is a hot smoking box, right?
Yeah.
So this is a device you basically have a propane fire underneath. Above the fire, you have a box full of chips, like hickory chips or some kind of hardwood chips. And then above that, you have a container full of water. And then above that, you have your meat on racks. And it's really good for making bacon and turning pork belly into bacon.
Or ribs or any kind of smoked meats.
And so what we do, one of the things that we do is we get a muffin tray and we buy a whole bunch of bulk tomatoes that are going off from Costco or whatever.
Yeah.
And we cut them in halves, and we get two muffin trays into this thing, and we cut the tomatoes in half and put them into these muffin trays and smoke them and then puree them, and we end up with barbecue tomato because obviously it's been smoked. So it's a really efficient way of doing a low carb tomato sauce.
That is brilliant.
So that's a little mini recipe that I got for you there. But
now there are also electric smokers which don't use propane,
right.
and they do a pretty good job too.
They do. It's just all you need is heat to get the smoke to happen out of the wood. I know that I got mine from Aldi, and around about Father's Day in Australia and in America, they have these cookers, these smokers. And Father's Day in Australia is different than Father's Day in America. It's a different date. So you just got to work out where you are. But so it was like maybe $130, $140. It didn't cost a lot of money. And it does a really good job. So I highly recommend it.
Great.
And the one in America last year was an electric one. The one in Australia was a propane one. So, both do a good job.
Now, there's also such a thing as a cold smoker, right? Or a smoking gun is another technique.
I've got one of those. I've only recently got it, and I smoke things like I smoke macadamias, which is awesome. I've smoked butter. Smoked butter is fine.
So it sort of looks like it's got a pipe on it, where you stick wood shavings or something, and then you light it. It almost kind of looks like drug paraphernalia. It
looks like a cone, basically.
Yeah. And then it blows the smoke into, some contained space, and you can use a bag, or I don't know what else you use.
I put cling wrap over a bowl. I put the food in the bowl. I put cling wrap over the bowl, and I stick the pipe from the device in. It's got a little fan. It's battery powered. It's got a little fan in it, and it draws air. It basically has a little impeller. It draws air through the smoking device and sends it out the pipe to the food. I've done things like shirataki noodles. So you get shirataki noodles, and you wet them so that they've got something for the smoke particles to attach to, and maybe you might put some melted butter in or something like that, because smoke attaches to the oil particles. Yeah. And then you basically cover it with a bit of cling film, stick the pipe in, hit it with some smoke. So basically that fills the bowl full of smoke, and then you turn the smoker off because you're going to hit it 3 or 4 times, and you shake it up and down, and you shake these shirataki noodles covered with melted butter in smoke, and eventually the smoke will subside because all the particles come out of suspension in the air. And so you hit it again, and then you hit it a 3rd time, and then you just use those smoked shirataki noodles. They are awesome. They taste really good.
How long does it take? How long do you let the smoke permeate for?
Well, it probably will dissipate within maybe 2 minutes, so it's not very long.
Really?
So yeah, I know when I did butter, I actually had a recipe for the smoked butter. It was actually a beurre blanc sauce using the butter, and so and the recipe said basically put it in the fridge in between uses, and so you basically charge it full of smoke, put it in the fridge. The smoke gets into the butter, you pull it out, you give it some more smoke, you chuck it back in the fridge again. So 3 times, and then you're 3 times the charm, and you end up.
Oh my God, this is great!
Smoke flavored butter. It's awesome.
Fantastic. All right. So there's one more thing that I want to talk about, which is muffin top pans.
Okay.
Now, a muffin top pan is like a muffin pan, but the receptacles are larger and more shallow.
So the holes are like the top end of a mushroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of a big mushroom. So I'm thinking maybe 5-6 inches across, something like that.
Portobello size, maybe.
Yeah, portobello size. And what this is really good for is oopsie bread.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
To make your own buns, yeah.
Yeah, you make your own buns. And so what I do is with the regular oopsie bread recipe, which calls for egg whites, and then you take the yolks and some cream cheese and whiz that all together. I'm going to say whiz now from that instead of beat or whip. Yep. Whiz just sounds better.
Whiz it up, yeah.
Whiz it all up. And I throw in a little onion powder too.
Yeah.
And that helps to flavor it a bit. You don't really need salt because the cheese is salty. And then you sort of fold that in to the egg whites and plop them down in this muffin top tin, 300 degrees for maybe 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how hot your oven is.
Nice.
And you take these things out and they actually make, because of the muffin tops have this bevel on the outer edge, they make these nice beveled bread pieces, for lack of a better word, that actually have a shape. And so when I use these in sandwiches and things, I flip them over so the bottom is the top of the bread.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's an essential piece of kitchen gear that I use all the time.
I've got to get me one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we should talk about a couple of essential techniques that you're going to need.
Yeah.
Things like making stock. We've done a recipe before about how to make stock, but this is essential for turning bones into broth.
Yep.
Turning all of the skin and connective tissue into gelatin. And a lot of your sauces will be based around throwing some stock in. Basically, if you sear a steak or somehow produce some fond at the bottom of the pan, you'll throw some stock over the top of that, whisk it up, and you'll end up with a jus, basically.
Yep. Yeah, stock is the base for every kind of sauce, and believe me, you're going to love the sauces. I mean, they just make meats so much more palatable, especially leaner cuts.
Yeah, and they're mostly all keto as well.
Yeah.
Bechamel is probably the only one that's not keto.
Yeah. And you can make a bechamel without the flour, too. You just omit it. I mean, heavy cream is a great thickener.
Really?
Let it bubble and boil, and then turn it down, and it basically thickens things up. Richard has talked about his brown stock recipe, so we won't go into that, but it is a little bit more involved. If you're interested in cooking, but you don't have a lot of time, I'm going to give you a surefire tip for making stock. All right.
Sure.
And you don't need to use a pressure cooker, but if you have one, it's going to take a lot less time. You go to the store and you buy a rotisserie chicken, and it's going to cost you like $5.
Yeah.
And it's already hot. Mm-hmm. Take that sucker home, and you basically take out the bones and the skin and set that aside. Peel all the meat off. Just use your fingers. Just peel all the meat and put it into a plastic Tupperware or something like that, or a metal bowl. And, make the meat bite-sized, so it's not just big pieces of meat. Just rip it all up. Take all them bones and that skin, and you put that in a pot with water, salt, maybe some thyme, maybe some rosemary, maybe some sage. Bay
leaf, maybe.
Yep. Bay leaf, maybe some onion powder, maybe some garlic. And you just let that cook on the stove on simmer, get it to a boil, and then simmer it for a few hours. 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
If you have a pressure cooker, put it in the pressure cooker, do 2 1-hour cycles.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. That's it right there. But what's great about that is it's already got that fond on the outside. It's already got that sort of char, not a char, but...
It's a Maillard reaction. It's a Maillard reaction that's happened on the surface of the skin that's turned it brown. It's caramelized, I guess.
Yeah, it's caramelized, right.
Yeah, cross-link the proteins and the sugars, yeah.
Now, what do you do with all that chicken? Well, I'm going to tell you. You get like a whole stalk of celery.
Okay.
And you chop that celery up into fine pieces and add it in there. Squirt in some mayonnaise, some celery salt, some black pepper. Kids, that's all you need. You've got the best chicken salad in the world right there.
Oh, nice.
And that chicken salad is great for just pull it, when you're hungry, you pull a little bit out of that, take a slice of smoked Gouda cheese, like our provolone or some sort of really good cheese, slap some chicken salad in there, wrap it up, eat it like a taco. I'm telling you, no hunger gone.
Lovely.
And now you've got stock.
That's it. That's pretty impressive. That's a lot easier than my recipe.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as good as your recipe, trust me. But, on a budget, and especially if you're time constrained, that's a perfect way to get stock.
Yeah.
And of course, then what Richard does is, and I do this too, is we let it cool. We put it in ice cube trays. And then after it's frozen, take the cubes of stock, put them in a big Ziploc bag, stick them back in the freezer, and now anytime you want stock, you just grab one of those and throw them in the pan, melt it.
Yeah.
You got stock.
I saw somebody today on the forum talking about further reducing their stock so that it makes into a gel, and then they put them into ice cube trays, and then the more gel-like they are, the more concentrated they are. Yeah,
and the more you reduce it, the more flavor you're going to get. I mean, look at guys like Bobby Flay. What do?
Yeah.
They take stock, they take herbs, spices, whatever, and then he reduces and reduces and reduces, and what he's left with is a very thick, very rich, very, very flavorful sauce.
Yeah. Nice.
Nice.
So the other thing I use ice cube trays for is one of the techniques with cooking is something called a mirepoix in French, or soffritto in Italy, or a trinity in America they call. So basically what you're doing is you're combining onion, celery, and either carrots or bell peppers, in Australia capsicums. So you combining these three, chopping them, dicing them very finely, and you're cooking them in a bit of oil or fat. I like to cook mine in butter, or bacon fat. Butter or bacon fat. So I get an entire head of celery, like half a dozen stalks of celery, and I'll get a bunch of carrots, and I'll get a bunch of onions. I'll dice them all up, and I'll make up a big old pot of this soffritto, cooking it in a bit of bacon fat, and then salting it well. So I'm basically making really hyper concentrated flavor. And then what I do is I put it into ice cube trays. I freeze it in ice cube trays, do the same trick of putting it into baggies. And then, for example, when I make a chicken stock, I'll just chuck one of these ice cubes in. It's done. It's ready to go. The flavor's all there, ready to go. Add to my stock, add to my sauces. So, yeah, I highly recommend you using ice cube trays for things like mirepoix.
And tomato sauce is another thing that you make and freeze in ice cube trays. Yeah. Well, wow, that we could go on and on here, folks. We're going to have to do another. We're going to have to do another show on cooking. But before we go into recipes, and I know this is a long show, we asked the people in our Facebook group to give us their favorite keto cooking blogs and or YouTube channels. Okay. And so we listed a few of these here, and I'll just read them. Carrie suggested Ditch the Carbs at ditchthecarbs.com. Some really good recipes there. Sarah suggested healthfulpursuit.com. Of course, there's reddit.com/r/keto recipes, which is, lots and lots of good stuff up there. Kate says Cooking Keto with Christy is another good one. Michael says ruled.me. That's a great low-carb site. Yeah. Simon, who's a member here, has a blog called Keto Island, ketoisland.com. Yeah. Of course, there's always Alton Brown. Dustin said he likes Alton Brown and Chef Steps. Neither are keto, but he likes those.
I like Chef Steps. I get a lot. I also have a blog called easylowcarb.com, which has got some recipes on it.
Yeah, and my recipes are at carlfranklin.net. Caveman Keto is another good one, and I like him because his videos are concise. He doesn't waste your time, but you know exactly how to do what he's doing. And he does fat bombs, he does fried cheese, he does all sorts of great stuff. And with that, I think it's time for...
Recipes!
Recipes! Save your due for a little.
Recipes.
Recipes. Not that this whole show hasn't been recipes, but okay.
Hit me, Carl.
Hit ya. Okay. I have talked about my take on Fathead Pizza, and if you don't know what Fathead Pizza is, there was a movie called Fathead, and in this movie... I haven't seen the movie, but at least on the blog anyway, there's a pizza crust that is made from mozzarella and cream cheese and almond flour or almond meal and an egg. And this has become a standard staple of not only our group, but ketonians everywhere, right, Richard?
Absolutely. It's amazing. Newbies, the first time they try the Fathead Pizza, just about everybody says, why didn't I do this before? It's awesome.
And I said the same thing. I think it was Brenda who said, oh, yeah, that's definitely a staple. And it is. But I sort of I won't say I perfected it, but I perfected it for me.
Right.
And I like this version of it, which I'm calling Carl's Head Pizza.
Well, you did a test with a kitchen, didn't you? You actually went to a pizza kitchen and used their equipment and showed them how to make fathead pizza. And these guys may be involved in the Keto Fest that's coming up, right?
Yeah, the Keto Fest, which is we're going to turn New London, Connecticut into a keto town for a weekend.
Nice.
Yeah, go to ketofest.com to check that out. It's going to be amazing, folks. And next year.
Yeah.
All right, so here's my take on fathead pizza. The biggest change is I omitted the egg.
So the egg's the binder, right?
Well, you think the egg is a binding, and the egg is binding for flour-based things, but we're talking about mozzarella cheese here, and that cheese is the real binder.
Yeah.
It binds itself.
Yeah.
And so I asked myself, once I was making this dough and I was working with it before I put the egg in, I'm like, you know what? This feels like pizza dough to me. Why would I add an egg? It's just going to make it more watery, more moist, I suppose. And I want a crispier crust.
Right.
So first of all, there's nothing at all wrong with the original recipe. I just think I found a way to improve it for me. All right. Well, anyway, it turns out that when you omit the egg, you run the risk of over crisping the crust, and especially when you cook it like I'm going to show you how to cook it. So you have to watch carefully not to overcook it. I would start the first one erring on the side of caution, undercook it a little bit. All right. So the next mod is I use almond flour instead of almond meal. And I never really differentiated between the two. But almond meal is more coarse.
Right.
And it includes the brown almond skin. So it has these little flecks of brown in it. I'm not going to make a judgment of which one is healthier or whatever. But it turns out you can get almond flour from Bob's Red Mill or any other brand that sells it. And the almond flour is just a sort of an off-white color, and it's a lot finer.
It's probably milled blanched almonds then.
Yeah, probably. Probably. And it seems to also be finer than meal. Meal tends to be coarse, flour tends to be fine. All right, so I use that, and then rather than baking the crust on a cold cookie sheet, as I was saying before, I use a pizza stone that's already hot. And that gives the bottom a nice pizzeria-style crust.
Right.
And I also, when I flip it over, I brush a little olive oil on the bottom when I cook the toppings. In fact, I brush olive oil on the top when I cook the toppings.
Yeah.
You can't add too much olive oil to a pizza crust, let me tell you.
No.
All right, so here's the modified recipe. 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese, 2 tablespoons of cream cheese, 3/4 cup of almond flour, a little garlic salt. Get the pizza stone or a preheated cookie sheet. You need some parchment paper. You need a rolling pin. So you place the pizza stone or the cookie sheet in the middle rack of the oven and preheat it to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. You put the mozzarella and the cream cheese in a microwave-safe bowl and cook it on high for 60 seconds. You remove that and stir it up with a fork until it's blended, and you put it back in the microwave for another 30 seconds. And then you pull it out, stir that up with a fork again, and now you add the almond flour. And you really got to work this in and stir it well until it's completely incorporated. And then you want to let it cool for a minute because you need to work it with your hands. So when it's cooler to the touch, maybe after 3 or 4 minutes, you pick it up, knead it for 60 seconds or so just to make sure all that almond flour is truly incorporated. Just bend it inside out a couple of times and then shape it into a round ball with your hands.
Right.
Now you put it on a piece of parchment paper and flatten it down to about 1 inch thick just so it makes a nice circle. Put another piece of parchment on top and you roll it out with a pin in all directions until it's about 12 inches in diameter. And you're going to experiment with sizes and thicknesses. If it's too thin, it might turn into a cracker crust. And if it's too thick, it might just be kind of, mushy. But I think because you're omitting the egg, you can get a thicker crust and still make it crispy. So take the top parchment off, set it aside because you're going to need that. You sprinkle the top with garlic salt and you place it, including the bottom parchment, directly onto the pizza stone that's hot in the oven. Now you're going to have to watch it. Bake it under a watchful eye for 5 to 8 minutes or until the edges get brown. And let me tell you something, that's all you need is about 5 to 8 minutes because your temperature is hot and you're on a hot pizza stone. So now you open the oven, pull out the rack, and remove it by holding on to the edges of the parchment paper on either side and just pull it off and put it on the table.
Off,
slide it off or just pick it up and put it right on your countertop. And then you're going to pierce the bubbles that form in it with a fork or a knife. You're going to flip it over, but before you do that, brush the top with olive oil because that top is now going to become your bottom.
Right.
You flip that over and brush the top again, the new top, which is the bottom that you just cooked, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Should be golden brown. Coat that with olive oil too. Add your pre-cooked toppings, cheese, herbs, whatever.
I like to use the back of a spoon and just to spread the olive oil, and you just spin the pizza and you basically get a nice, good coverage of olive oil.
Right. If you want sauce, there's low-carb sauces. Mm-hmm. Typically, a tomato sauce is going to be about 4 carbs per quarter cup. So just be careful with that. But add your cheese, herbs, whatever, meats, pre-cooked toppings. If you're going to have meat, make sure they're already cooked. Mushrooms, make sure they're already cooked. Onions, etc., unless you want them raw. It's
the same as a fathead. You're not going to be cooking the meat on the pizza.
No.
You're going to be cooking the cheese.
Yeah, you want to melt the cheese and warm up the toppings. So you put that back in the oven for another 5 to 8 minutes, or until the toppings have cooked and the cheese is melted, and then you just remove, enjoy, cut with a pizza slicer.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And so the taste is qualitatively different from the fathead. With that it won't be as eggy,
right? And
it'll be a finer flour. So it'll feel like wheat flour.
Yeah, it really is the closest thing to pizza I've ever had on the keto diet.
Awesome.
There it is. That's my recipe. What you got?
So I've got salmon, and it's a recipe called salmon with salmon bacon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sous vide to cook the salmon perfectly medium rare.
Yeah.
Now, the problem, the salmon's an oily fish. It's fine for most people to eat medium rare, but children and elderly and immunocompromised people shouldn't eat medium rare fish.
Right.
Our pregnant women also shouldn't eat medium rare fish. We're going to be sous videing it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be putting it in a vacuum bag, and we're going to be putting it at a temperature and cooking it perfectly. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove the skin. So you get a fillet of salmon, and there's a small triangle down one side of that fillet, and if you grab that with a pair of pliers, you can pull the entire skin off the surface of that salmon.
Now, is it easier to pull off the skin before you cook it or after?
Before you cook it. Definitely want to remove it before you cook it, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting 2 cookie trays, and we're going to be getting some parchment. So we're going to have a cookie tray, some parchment on that. We're going to lay our strips of skin on that parchment. We're going to put another piece of parchment on top, and we're going to put another cookie tray on top, and we're going to put it in the oven, and we're going to bake it. And what that does is that makes salmon bacon.
Salmon bacon.
So that's one step of the process. Now, I've got an entire blog on the details. We don't have a lot of time to go into the weeds here, but so what you've got now is you've got your salmon bacon that's in the oven. Now, what you also want to do is we obviously want to cook the salmon, but if you just cook salmon in a bag now in a sous vide, what will happen is all of the albumin that's in the muscle of the salmon will come out, and it'll be like a milky material that you see, and it's unsightly. So what I like to do is I like to brine the fish first. So what you can do is you can put it in a 10% brine, so per weight 10% salt, 90% water mixture. You put your salmon fillets in that for maybe 30 minutes in the fridge, and what that will do is that will set the albumin in the meat, so you don't end up with that nasty discharge of white material when you cook it. And then you're going to set your temp. If you want to have a medium cooked fish, you probably want 57 degrees or 135 Fahrenheit. But if you, like me, you want a medium rare fish, that is really the best way to eat salmon. I tell you, it is choice. And so you want 52 Celsius or 125 Fahrenheit.
Nice.
Now, the thing with meats, most mammal meats you can leave in the bag, leave in the sous vide for 3 or 4 days. Fish you don't want to, because there's a enzyme that breaks down the proteins in the fish, and that becomes sort of mealy and not a very nice texture when it's cooked for over an hour. So I generally cook mine for about 30 minutes. So it's been 30 minutes brining, and I'm aware that I've got my salmon bacon in the oven. That only needs to be in there until it just starts to go brown. And then you just put it aside and let it go dry, and that salmon bacon is you're going to use that to dress the salmon at the end. So you chuck the salmon in a bag. Now you've brined it. You now coat it with a bit of olive oil, put it in the bag, seal the bag up, put it in the sous vide at 52 degrees for about 30 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, but you'll be able to feel that the fish is ready. And then what I do is I put it straight on a warm plate, and I also mix up I blend a soft avocado and some wasabi and a little bit of mayonnaise to make a sauce to go on top of the salmon. And wasabi just has a really awesome, it's almost like it's
a horseradish.
It's a horseradish. It's a Japanese horseradish, but what it does is it enhances the umami of the salmon. So it enhances that umami flavor.
Umami is a Japanese word that means savory.
Yeah, it's the flavor of protein.
The glutamates.
Yes, that's it. So these umami flavors basically the salmon, and it's basically what I do is I smear some of this avocado wasabi mayonnaise dressing over the top of the piece of salmon, and then put the bacon on top of that, and maybe put a bit of salad on the side. That's my meal. So
salad. That's what food eats. I'm kidding, of course. I eat salad every day.
Yeah, I eat salad all the time.
Just to add to your recipe, Richard, and I apologize for going long here, but I think everyone's still with us. I serve my salmon fillets with a sauce that's more like a Greek tzatziki sauce, which is sour cream, all right, as a base. And then you can either add fresh chopped garlic, or if you want something tamer, Richard's roasted garlic that you just sort of squeeze out and whiz up, and also chopped fresh dill. Dill goes really well with salmon. Yeah. And so you chop up fresh dill weed and you sprinkle that in there and mix it all up with some salt and pepper and garlic, and that right there is just a wonderful rich sauce. If you really want it more rich, you can add a little mayonnaise to it.
That sounds delicious. No, that sounds really good.
Well, again, we apologize for going long, but it was pretty awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've just enjoyed talking about cooking. So if you have anything that you want to tell us, something we said wrong or something that you don't agree with, some more research that you found to support or refute what we've said, please send it by email to dudes@twoketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And again, join our Facebook group at fb.2keto.com. Follow us on Twitter at 2ketodudes, and also on Instagram. At 2ketodudes. Party on, Garth.
Party on, Wayne.
Keep calm and keto on, and we'll see you next week on 2 Keto Dudes.